Welcome to the broadcast, my delicious jam tarts. I hope you are very well on this 5th anniversary of the wedding of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Hasn't so much changed in just 5 short years. And how absolutely sad the way that things panned out when they could have had the world at their fingertips, and instead they find themselves firing off the most ludicrous, ridiculous, insulting legal letters to Backgrid News Agency. Absolutely ludicrous. The whole world laughs at them when they could have had the whole world's admiration, just as their nemesis, the King, is receiving at this very moment. Yes, receiving plaudits and support from all ends of the lollipop, all varieties of gemstones. And just this week, he was presenting the Elizabeth II Award for British Design at a special industry showcase event hosted by the British Fashion Council. Surrounded by glitterati, Hollywood royalty, including Woody Harrelson, who was very impressed by the King, very impressed. They queue up for him. Do the Harkles not understand this? With their snide, competitive spirit, do they not understand with their Ellen DeGeneres and their operas and their Gales? And Gail isn't perhaps quite so loyal as they were hoping, is she, as we found out this week? But Tom Cruise lines up for every royal event, can't get enough of royalty. Edward Enninful, always sniffing around the King. You know, love Edward Enninful, but and it's wonderful. It's wonderful he has that association, and I've been praising him lately for it. But Meghan thought she would have the likes of him and Vogue and the Fashion Parade and the Fashion Police and the Thought Police in her pocket, and that they would all come clamouring just for her after the Oprah debacle. Well, it didn't work out that way, because fashion comes and goes, my dear, but style, royal spirit remains steadfast, as they have both found out to their chagrin. But Edward was loyally at the King's side for this fashion showcase, this fashion award. As I said, Woody Harrelson, David Beckham was there. He was there presenting the King with some homemade honey to sweeten him up, no doubt. Wonderful. And the award, and this award was first presented, by the way, by the late Elizabeth in 2018. Do you remember that time when she rocked up with Anna Wintour, Angela Kelly, and stole the show? She was the most chic on parade during that fashion show. She really was. I loved that look, that Karl Lagerfeld on stilts. It might be my number one look of her entire reign. I just loved that moment when she stole the show. I think she was incredibly chic. Socked it to him. I love those sort of moments, my dear. But this time the award went to a lovely young chap who was representing his brand Lebrun London. This was founded by Fode Dambuya, who grew up in Sierra Leone, Cyprus and London. And the aesthetic of his brand is a narration of the untold stories of the diaspora, merging West African values with British tailoring. The King was looking handsome in pinstripes. And do you know, this was a little bit of trivia which tickled me the other day. I hadn't heard it before. You might have done, but if you take the Prince of Wales, it is an anagram of I who left a Spencer. Yes, the Prince of Wales, I who left a Spencer. Who'd have thunk it? I haven't checked to see if the anagram of the Duchess of Sussex throws up anything similar, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised. The Princess of Wales was absolutely ravishing in green at the Anna Freud Centre, of which she is patron, in this green Susanna tea dress made of Italian silk crepe. How gorgeous. She joined in with roundtable discussions on mental health, anxiety, and the challenges facing the young. She said that she believes emotions should not be over-medicalised, particularly among young people who tend to latch on to labels of any sort. Meghan and Harry sent a legal demand via their lawyers to Backgrid News Agency, and this beggars belief. This absolutely beggars belief. We hereby demand that Backgrid immediately provide us with copies of all photos, videos and or films taken last night by the freelance photographers after the couple left their event, and over the next several hours. I beg your pardon. As far as I'm aware, these photographers, as annoying as they can be, and I'm sure that they are pretty annoying, I don't have a special admiration for those in that industry, some of them who shove cameras and obstruct people from going about their business, including the Sussex if that applies to them. But as far as I'm aware, these particular photographers they're talking about didn't cross any particular code of the Press Association, and also didn't break any laws, as far as I'm aware. Happy to be proven wrong. But bearing that in mind, what right do they have to demand such things? Provide us with all your photos in a public place. This wasn't backstage. This was in a yellow taxi cab. Why are you protected and nobody else? Why are there special laws for you and nobody else? Why do you think that you get to have it all your way? Why do you think that you get to draw attention to yourself, arrive in your sparkling gowns and your glittering audience, court publicity, and then shy away from it? You know, come, look at us, don't. Look at us, don't. We want to be on cover of magazines. We want to provide service our own way, our royal way, away from the glare of publicity, except when we want it. But then, no, it is absolutely absurd, and quite rightly, Backgrid, who I don't have a special affection for, by the way, it's not an industry that wins great plaudits from me, but I appreciate their sarcastic response. In America, as I'm sure you know, they addressed Harry's lawyer. Property belongs to the owner of it. Third parties cannot just demand it be given to them, as perhaps kings can do. Perhaps you should sit down with your client and advise them that his English rules of royal prerogative to demand the citizenry hand over their property to the crown were rejected by this country long ago. We stand by our founding fathers. Yes. So, I appreciate that it was sarcastic in tone, tongue-in-cheek, and I get the humour, and I accept it, my dear. I think it was rather wonderful, to be honest, but just in response to that little bit of shade thrown upon subjects of this nation, Backgrid. Just a reminder that we are no longer in the 1600s, and the power of the crown isn't what it was during the time of empire or before the time of empire. And if you are going to throw shade upon our king by implying that he has such powers to make such demands, where it's patently clear he does not, because his family suffer from all kinds of intrusions constantly, from Catherine photographed topless to his own phone calls, not only recorded but published in the media, I think that speaks to that. And you also could have a word with your own government and your own FBI with regards to information that is withheld from the public constantly under both red and blue. That in regards to the most recent election, for example, hard drives that had to be handed over, family members of the president that were protected, and articles not allowed to be published, censored, silent information. So no, you are not under the reign of a king. We are no longer under the rule of a king. That is a great misunderstanding. We are reigned over, not ruled over. Is your crown really so very different with regards to the setup you describe? Anyway, shade aside, I accept that it was made in good humour, and I accept that it was really rather delicious, and it put them in their place, and rightfully so. Even their bestie, Gayle King, on CBS popped up to say that it was a scary moment, but police tell us it was not as serious as Harry and Meghan said. Woohoo! What? Don't clutch your rubies, Meghan, because they ain't as big as mine, my dear. Old whoopee cushion on The View, I think she had something to say about it as well. Seemed to throw or pour a little scorn on suggestions that high-speed traffic moves apace around the blocks of New York. Anybody who's either been to it or even seen it on the box can tell you that the traffic's more or less at a standstill the whole time. It's not this sort of motorway affair. Queen Camilla launched the first Coronation Library in Bristol. This is one of 50 libraries and reading spaces that will be created by the National Literary Trust in communities with low levels of literacy. The Queen joined the children of Shirehampton Primary for fun activities and drawing, with celebrated authors and illustrators joining in the gay jamboree, and the Queen delighted with her drawing of a crown, which she said was rather wobbly, and I thought it was rather wonderful. And each Coronation Library will receive a set of 23 children's books, chosen by children across the country. There were some exceptional posies received by the Queen. Lovely, pinky, cheery blooms. Wonderful. Wonderful. And Francesca Simon was present, the author of the horrid Henry series. Yes, she was there to help the launch. How very apt, and I'm sure it produced a snigger. The cost of the late Queen's funeral has been published for the first time, £162 million, and this has inspired some debate in the press, as is usual whenever one of these large figures emanates. And I wanted to add a little balance to the conversation, because it is my belief that we get a lot more than we give to the monarchy. And when you put things in perspective, it seems to make a little bit more sense. 162 million bucks, or pounds I should say rather, is a colossal sum, obviously. But most people here in the kingdom recognise that this is a unique occasion for our head of state, and our head of state is not replaced or expires often. At the first half of the last century, it was a little bit more frequent, but over the last century, once in 70 years, it's a big deal, and it's kind of deserved. And also a lot of that money goes on security now, because there are so many new threats, so much to pay for. But for those who don't understand how the monarchy is funded, what we pay to it and what we draw from it as a nation, I wanted to just hold forth on that, because it is the government that fund the king's official business through an annual payment from the sovereign grant. And the sovereign grant is what pays for staff costs and the running of the official royal household. And also when it comes to the royal palaces, it's their maintenance, their upkeep, and also travel expenses. And about 15% of the profits from the Crown Estate go to the monarchy. 15%. And the Crown Estate includes thousands of acres of land, including places like Regent Street here in the kingdom, but thousands and thousands of acres. Also the seabed is included in that, which has become very lucrative, especially over the last few years. Yes, that's all owned by the Crown Estate, and also half of the foreshore here in England and Wales. But this 15% that they receive was increased to 25% in 2017. Now that is due to the refurbishments at Buckingham Palace, and it's going to only last for 10 years, then it will revert to around about 15%. But at the moment it's a 25% profit from the Crown Estate that goes to the monarch because of these refurbishments, which are a colossal project. They are updating this very antiquated palace, which is a working environment and is a sort of living, breathing museum, or treasure chest for the kingdom, if you will. But for the previous financial year, for 2021 to 2022, the total amount received by the royal family from the sovereign grant was £86 million, and that is the equivalent of £1.29 per person in Britain. So that is how much I, as a British taxpayer, contributes towards monarchy, £1.29. But if you were to exclude the extra works that are going on at the moment and the extra percentage of the profit that goes to the monarch, and it was just reduced back down to the core fund, it would only be 77p of mine going towards the monarchy per year, 77 pence. But regardless, whether it's 77p or £1.29, it's less than a cup of coffee. Actually, it's probably half or less than half, or a quarter of what most people will charge for a coffee now, isn't it? So it is not an amount that I begrudge. Although, if people object to the monarchy, I understand that they don't even want to give their 77 pence to the monarchy, but I have more sympathy with other logical, reasonable arguments that people have if they are more in favour of a republic. The monetary argument holds less water, in my opinion, because even though we all give £1.29 towards the monarchy, I feel that what we receive back as a nation far outweighs that piddling cost. In comparison to the late Queen's funeral, which was £162 million, the coronation estimates for King Charles' coronation are between £50 and £100 million. So there's quite a large disparity between estimates there, but it's in that kind of ballpark, you could say. We won't find out for another year or so. But there is an income that supplements the sovereign grant, and that is just under £10 million, and that £10 million is actually far behind what it was before the pandemic. It would have been double that, around £20 million, but that particular income was affected by the lack of visitors as palaces closed and weren't able to receive tourists or visitors during that time, so that particular income suffered. The monarch receives most of his earnings from the Privy Purse. You know, I speak to you often about the Privy Purse. Well, what that actually means are the proceeds from the Duchy of Lancaster estate. They are the monarch's private earnings, and the Duchy of Lancaster estate is a portfolio of land, property and other assets that are held in trust for the sovereign. And recently that increased from £2 million to £24 million. So there's been a huge surge of positive activity and finance in that area. So that's another lucrative area of interest for the king, 24 million. But that duchy has been the personal estate of the sovereign since 1399 and is separate from other crown possessions. It's used to pay for official expenditure that's not been met through the sovereign grant and meets the expenses of other members of the royal family as well. But on the other end of the lollipop are the advantages, are what we receive in return for our £1.29 investment, because the royal family and their activities pump hundreds of millions into our economy each year, occasionally billions. It's estimated that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's wedding, for example, all the activity around that boosted our economy by at least £1 billion. Yes, in that 1 year. So do you see? Do you see how it pays for itself and then some? It boosts the economy in a multitude of ways, of course, quite obviously through tourism and leisure, and there is a knock-on effect whenever there are royal goings-on here, hotels, restaurants, holidaymakers and shops. People begin spending freely and generously. Merchandise, royal merchandise, but also everything surrounding the locations and the activity and the general enthusiasm. And also in 2022 there were 2.5 million visitors to the royal collection alone. And that, for example, helped supplement the sovereign grant by £10 million. The King's coronation is expected to have boosted tourism and spending in pubs by £340 million, for example. And also televised royal events provide a significant boost, and global interest as well, as is obvious to everyone, is a major boon for the British media industry, and conservative estimates of this contribution to the media industry are £56 million. I would beg to differ there. I would say that's a very conservative estimate. You've all seen, and you can all see, how much global media coverage the royal family generates and how lost our own newspapers and print would be without them to report on. They would find it a lot more difficult to get attention. There is a reason why the royal family, whether it's Catherine, Meghan, Harry, William, the King, Camilla, Andrew, whoever it is, my dear, splashed all over front pages, because they sell. And it's not just here in the kingdom, as you know, it's all over the world. But much of what they offer is intangible. In fact, I would go as far as to say that it is actually more the intangible that provides us with advantage than the tangible, than the statistics, than the pounds sterling that can be totaled up, and provided to us as estimates. I actually think it is the soft power of monarchy which is its greatest power. It is the goodwill that is put out there, the good work that you see, that I try to draw attention to. There is a reason why I stud my broadcasts with the work of the unsungs, the Gloucesters, the Kents, the Edinburghs, and the more visible ones such as Catherine with her work with early years, mental health. You all know what they all get up to because I've been telling you about, not suggesting that just because I've been telling you about it, but I am told every day by lots of people that I've opened your eyes as to what they actually do. They don't just sit in some parlour counting bread and honey and a great big pile of money all day. They work, they are in service to us, and I don't begrudge paying them £1.29 for their service. And actually, I was looking at my own personal tax breakdown because I pride myself on getting my facts and figures for tax purposes over to my accountant at 5 minutes past midnight on the end of the tax year. I think it's the 5th of April, wasn't it? And they sort everything out and they send off all my figures to the government. And then afterwards I received a little breakdown of the percentages of where my tax goes. And of course, chiefly, I think 40 or 60% goes to health first and foremost, because here in the kingdom we have the free national health service where you don't pay for anything on point of entry. We have a national health service, but that money comes out of our tax instead. So health, of course, and then welfare is another great biggie. And one doesn't begrudge contributing to most of these things in most ways, and one is pleased to do so. But when I see the huge percentages that they and many other factors come up with, the huge amount that goes to the vast amount of my tax that goes to everything else, and then I compare it to the absolutely infinitesimal amount of my tax that goes to the royal family and the monarchy and sustaining that institution for our head of state, our global ambassadors. I am sorry, but it just it appears to pale in comparison. And as much sympathy as I can have with those who want a republic and don't appreciate our head of state and don't want a constitutional monarchy, and I do have sympathy because who'd want to be stuck with a system or a system that you don't enjoy or don't believe in? So I do have sympathy for them. I don't agree with them. I prefer our system of constitutional monarchy. I don't agree, but I can sympathise. But I sympathise more with their other arguments. There are other more logical, reasonable arguments, but the financial one for me doesn't really hold much water when you understand what you are giving and what you are receiving in return. You give little kisses, you get bigger hugs, and I feel totally embraced by our constitutional monarchy. The Duke of Edinburgh spent a day in Liverpool and Leicestershire, and he kicked off at the Shakespeare North Playhouse. He opened it. It is a new multi-million-pound arts venue, and it is the only 17th century style timber-built cockpit theatre outside London. Yes, and 2023 marks 400 years. It is the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's first folio publication, and it will celebrate this folio through its programming, looking into its historical significance. And Prince Edward visited the Sharma Women's Centre, which is a local charity providing culturally inclusive support and activities to the local women, and he popped into the African Caribbean Centre for a boogie-woogie. And he also took to King Richard III's Visitor Centre. And this was rather interesting. Did you hear about the discovery of the remains of King Richard III, who came to a rather grisly end a very long time ago? He was dug up in a car park. Yes, his remains were excavated and DNA tested, and it was confirmed to be him, dug up in an old car park, which used to be Greyfriars Priory back in its time. It was the site of a priory. And he was dug up, confirmed, and then he was reinterred at Leicester Cathedral, which is also where Prince Edward visited this week. And the site of those remains was transformed into a visitor centre. This was only 2012, by the way, that these remains were discovered. Then he was reinterred in 2015, and then the site was transformed into this visitor centre. So, isn't it interesting? And it just goes to show that where there's muck, there's brass. And it's becoming something of a tradition to end on Princess Eugenie, isn't it? To see what hideous clothing she's coming up with. And she's, you know, she's had a few winners lately. But today, no. Today, no. I saw these photos and I thought, what is she thinking? And is this her version of stealth wealth? I'm not quite sure. But to my eyes, it looks like she has been instructed to find the two most hideous items of clothing in Christendom and chuck them on herself. That seems to be the project she's undertaking. Yes, so she looks like a bag lady, but at least she's comfortable. That's the thing. She's in her final trimester, about to burst. In fact, we know she's about to burst because Fergie let it slip. Yes, her mother let it slip in an interview that she's due by the end of May, any day now. So not long to go. It's exciting, and she does look beautiful in the face, that lovely clear complexion. And you know, I do still find the girl adorable, so I don't mean to disparage her. Yes, the clothes are absolutely hideous, and she paid quite a lot for them, but that is how she feels comfortable, and at least she is not attention grabbing or vulgar in that respect. And sometimes she almost gets it right. This was at the Audley, by the way, that pub that she loves so much. Another pub lunch, trotting around Mayfair and having a lovely time. But we are ready to see you pop, aren't we? And thank you for popping in today to see me with my jam tart rubies. They always remind me of glistening jam, you know, like hot jam or jam tarts, or as we say here in the kingdom, jammy dodgers, a type of biscuit. Yes, I like being covered in gemmy jam. Wonderful. And seeing as you've hung around to the end, I'll let you in on a little bit of a secret, which is this is the third time really that I've recorded this broadcast today. Yes, I scrapped the first version and I've been recording it for an hour and a half. Well, I've just done it all over again because I wasn't happy with it when I played it back. And one of the reasons was, the main reason actually, is because my cashmere had enveloped the necklace like this throughout the whole thing, and I wasn't happy. It annoyed me watching it back in the edit, and I knew that it would probably annoy or irk some of you as well. So I've been trying to make sure it is regally displayed and not swallowed up for this take. Little things like that happen quite frequently, you know. It's not the first time that I've had to do a re-record, and I hope that I've managed to try and keep it fresh for this second or third take. Onwards, my dear. I got through it, and thank you for your company. I'll see you next time. Leave me a nice, juicy, jammy tart comment, and have a lovely weekend ahead, won't you, my dears? Toodaloo and ta-ra. Channel the royal spirit.